Alright, so let's see. I actually bothered writing down a couple ideas of what I wanted to do. Alright, so first off, let's go ahead and I'll format it like I kind of want you to do your code. So first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and write a method called a function called main. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want to imitate the way you're eventually going to do stuff in future classes like Java or in C. Pass, just by the way, means that I'm just leaving it blank for right now. It's not really anything you ever have to remember. It's just simply what I'll do. And then I'll start it by calling main. Typically, actually, the way if you start looking at code online, and we'll get into this much later, but if you see this, if the more correct way to do it is this: if name equal, I believe this is the way to do it, and it's just a weird thing, but if you see this is basically doing the same thing. We're not going to do that for right now, though, so don't worry. Main, right? And I'll just go ahead and actually start it off. Print starting program, right? Because I want one place where I can basically easily find all the stuff that I'm doing. Okay. Now let's talk about a common problem that I have in that we'll get, especially that will be common next week. Suppose I want to figure out how big a string is, right? For instance, starting program, that is, I don't know, that's a bit more than I'd want to count. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then, so that's 9 plus 7, so that's 16 characters long, if I'm counting it by eye. Very annoying to have to count like how long something is by eye. Now there is a built-in function in in Python as to how to figure out how big something is. That's called the len function, but we're not going to use it right yet. Suppose that there was no len function in Python, right? How would I figure out how big a string was? All right. Well, let's go ahead and go into that. Well, I guess we'll have to write a new command that would do that. So let's go ahead and write a function called length, which given a string, which I'll just call string, right? Given a string, I'll figure out how big the string is. So how do I do that? Well, I'd have to go through and basically count the characters, right? And remember, we could iterate, and just to remember, I could go like I showed that you could do this last time around, like for a letter in string, print a letter, right? And that would print out each letter one at a time. So if I do length of hello, which is 5 characters, right? Right, starting program, it will print out HELLO. How many lines did it print out? 1 for each character, so 5. Right? So I can loop through this, and this will run once for every character. So we can do something called a running sum. Right? So let me go ahead and write something called, let's call num cars over here, and we set it equal. The right, which one? Oh, darn! I was hoping that basically that would get around it. But not so much. All right, so let's go ahead and just do it the way I've been doing it. Let's go ahead and see. Will this work, by the way? Boom, boom, boom. Right, I'd have to check down here to see what the output was. That's a bit annoying. All right. So we'll just keep it like this for right now. All right. So here we can say the number of characters is equal to 0, and every time we read a letter, I'm going to increase number of characters by 1, right? I'm going to use that notation. Num cars is equal to num cars plus 1. right? That says, okay, number of characters starts at 0. I'm going to take what's on the right, which is 0 plus 1, and store it on the left when I read that very first character, right? So I'm going to read capital H, right? And so now num characters will be 1. So then I'm going to read E. So I'm going to do 1 plus 1 is equal to what? 2. So I'm going to store 2 in here. And then I'll read the first L, and it will go, okay, num characters is currently 2. I'm going to add 1 to that. And now num characters is 3. So then I'm going to print out that L. I'm going to read the second L. I'm going to go to num characters plus 1 is equal to 4. Store that in num characters. And then I'm going to go ahead and read the O. 4 plus 1 gets stored in here, which stores 5 in there. All right? So, of course, if I run this again, it does nothing because I didn't tell it to do anything extra, right? Except, right? Once we create something, we have to actually use it. So let's go ahead and print num cars over here. So it should print out hello and then 5. If I try mash on keyboard, right, it will tell me how long that is. And it says that mash on keyboard is 17 characters long. So this is called a running sum, and it's a very commonly used technique to do things. All right? So now we know how long a string is. That's kind of useful. Or it would be if we did more than just print it out, right? Because we print it out. But once we print something out, really when we print something out, that's just for the user to see. The computer can't really use what we print out, right? I can print out something, but I can't really use it once it gets printed out. So I have to have a way of returning that back to the programmer to use it, right? So we can do that with something called the return statement. And this returns it back outside of the function that we wrote. So number of characters is equal to 0. 4-letter in string, the num cars plus 1 is equal to num cars, return num cars. And this is all going over stuff, again, that is in Chapter 3. We're going to be jumping back and forth between Chapters 2 and 3 just for the next couple of weeks. Just simply because I like to do things that actually make sense to me, and the book's a fairly good reference for that. So, all right. So now, of course, if I run something, it doesn't really do anything on its own, right? Printing is for the user, but returning is for the computer. Return num characters, and now let's see how we use it. str length is equal to length mash on keyboards. Print that was plus str length plus characters long. Okay, so now if I run this, it runs, so I'm doing something right. It says starting program, that was 17 characters long. Now how to do that? Well, what I did is that I passed in mash on keyboard into here, and it copied mash on keyboard into the string. All right, then it said, okay, we're going to start by counting the number of characters there are. Number of characters is equal to 0. I'm going to read M, that's one character. A, that's another character. S, that's another character. H, that's another character, right? And so on and so forth until it read every single character and said, okay, so how many did I read? Oh, 17, right? This incremented every time I read a character. And now I pass back that number to the user, right, or to the programmer. So here we replace this statement with num characters, essentially, the value that's stored in num characters. We take 17 and we copy it over to here, and then copy that over into here, right? The return, basically, here we're passing something in, and now we're passing something back. Does that make sense so far? The idea is that return passes something back, right? Now, not all functions return, right? We've been writing functions that don't return, and for your homework, you are currently writing things that don't return, and that's perfectly fine. For right now, but in future programs, we'll be writing functions that return. But I needed to write that because otherwise, the next thing I want to do kind of just doesn't, make sense, right? Because while I can write a for loop that prints out every character, like this, for x, so for a letter in hi, how are you? Print L, right? It gives us a way to go through all the characters one at a time, right? In the correct order, but that's all we have control over right now. We only have control of going through this one character at a time, which is actually not so great, right? That's actually kind of limited as to what we can do here. Like if I wanted to print every other character or print it in reverse, I really don't have a way to do that with this paradigm, unless actually you know how to manipulate your string slices and say, hey, this is actually how you do it in reverse. But that's weird esoteric formatting, right? And we want to avoid that for right now, right? We want to keep our things simple and not magic, right? We want to build up to we want to build up to the magic so you can understand the magic. I don't like handing you things and saying, why does this work? Magic. All right. So how can I use the range to print something in reverse? Here I'm going to write a function, and this one will not return anything because I'm just printing it in reverse, right? A lot of times when we write stuff that just prints stuff out, we don't return stuff. So print in reverse, right? And now this we'll build this up by parts. But basically we're given a string, we want to print it in reverse, right? So let's review. So remember, let's go ahead and write our loop that says, hey, for letter in string, we'll just go ahead and print out this L, right? And we'll just start from here and keep going on. Now, this isn't necessarily stuff you need for the homework, but the techniques you learn here are applicable, right? This is why I'm going a bit ahead in the stuff that we're lecturing on, because it's also because the techniques, the general understanding, is all applicable to the stuff you need to do. So print in reverse, right? This does not print it in reverse. Well, first, mainly because I didn't actually call it, so, I should probably fix that. Right? Doesn't, common mistake that I see that everybody make, including myself, why doesn't my program do anything? Oh, because I forgot, because I wrote the function and I never called it. You'll make that mistake. I make that mistake all the time. Print in reverse, apple. Right? And this should just print it in actual order because, we just told it to print it in actual order. So how do I print it in reverse? Well, the idea here is that I can use something called, well, let's go ahead and see what we can do, right? Let's put that on hold for a second. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the method that we just wrote above, right? So for I in length string, right? Print I, right? Let's go ahead and actually, well, that's not really going to do anything because it's just a number, right? But if I've got a number, I can give it a range. So let's look at that. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, APPLE. So remember when we were doing the blame the Pope that basically we were working with string slices, right? And we were grabbing some characters at a time. We can kind of use that over here. Let's take a look. So first off, from now on, I'm not going to use the length function that we wrote. Instead, I'm going to use the proper Python way of doing it, which is to use a function that if you ever need to know how big something is, be it a string or a list or anything else, instead you just use the handy-dandy len function. So for range length, len in string, we can do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And that will go through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you remember from last week, when we were going over it, we were dealing with indices, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for a string, right? A is index 0, 1, P, the first P is 1, the second P is 2, then L, and then E is at index 4, right? It's 5 long, but it goes from indices 0 to 4. Oh, that's useful. That's kind of the same way that range works, right? If I pass in range 10, it goes from 0 to 9. Same way. It's deliberate because indices start with 0, right? So now let's see what I can do with this. I'm going to delete this part, and now let's see what I can do. I'm going to break this up into parts. Letter is equal to string I and print letter. Now, anybody remember what this does? What this statement does? Right? We remember, right? We were using this statement, right, which grabs like a certain range, right? But anybody remember what it does if you only have one number passed in? Sorry? It doesn't go to the end. This goes to the end. This one goes to the end. That's what you're thinking of. But good guess. So this one, if you just pass in one thing, it just gets the letter just there. So let's see that work out. APPLE, different way of doing what we had below. Let's go ahead and print out I, comma, letter. Index 0 has A, index 1 has P, index 2 has P, index 3 has L, index 4 has E. Interesting. So let's go ahead and I'm going to trace this loop to see what we're doing here. Right? At the beginning, I's value is, so first off, what is range? It provides a range of values to me. What values is it going to provide? It's going to provide up to length of string. Well, what is the string we're passing in? It's apple, right? So our string is APPLE, right? Capital A. What's its length? It's 5, right? So I'm just going to write down len string is, so length of APPLE is 5, right? And again, this is comments. This is like me jotting it down like I would be doing on paper, right? So you don't necessarily have to just follow the logic. That's more important than necessarily writing it down. Okay, length of APPLE is 5. So range of length of apple over here would be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? The 5 values there, right? That's the way range works. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So next, let's go ahead and do. So that means that I's values are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? Everybody following so far? Those are I's values. So now, let's go ahead and say, if I is 0, what is letter? Letter is string of I. So what is string at index 0? What's string at index 0? A. So at 0, we're going to get A. Okay, next, I is going to be 1. So what's the next value? So what's the next value? What is the value at string of 1? P. And then at 2 it will be P as well. And then at 3 it will be L. And then at 4 it will be E. And then after that there's no more values in the range, so we stop. All right. So given that we know that, how can we now do it in reverse? Right? If we want to do it in reverse, we'd want to print 4E, 3L, 2P, 1P, 0A. Right? So what's the beginning of that range? 4. We want to start at index 4, right? We want to start at index 4. Right? So we want to start at length of string minus 1, right? And then we want to stop, we want to go to 0, so this is going to look a bit weird, but we'll try 0 for right now. There's a number of ways to do this. And then we have to say -1 because we want to go backwards. So we'll run it, and we get E, L, P, P, but no A. Why didn't we get an A? It excludes 0, right? So what can I do here? There's a couple things I can do, but what can I do here? I can do -1, which looks kind of weird, right? But at least it's symmetrical, right? Length of string -1, -1, -1. And it still matches, right? Length of string -1 minus -1 is 5, which is the total number of characters that are printed out. That's a bit weird. So, but A, E, L, P, P, A. So there we go. We can print it out in reverse like that. Of course, if we actually want to print it out in reverse, like as one word, we do end is equal to blank blank, end is equal to blank, let everything kind of just get together, and then print out nothing at the end. So that it goes like that. Give you all a chance to catch up on that. Yes?
Why do you have to print nothing at the end?
Because I wanted a new line.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted a new I wanted to start as a new line, and it's just force of habit that I do that.
You want no new line. Right.
I want nothing on the new line. I want basically to start a new line because letter end, it's not going to advance to a new line.
Right.
All right, so let's go on to something similar, right, but actually a bit easier. So here, in this one, I would want to print A, the second P, and E. So I'd want to print ape out, right? I want to print every other character, right? So I'm going to go ahead and steal this because, or I'll rewrite it because, you know, that won't take long at all. For I in range, len string, right? Print. I'll go ahead and, you know, do letter is equal to string. I could print out, you know, string I directly, but I don't necessarily want to jump into making my statements too large yet. Print letter. Okay, don't want to run it yet because what I want to do is, you know, comment out this one and call it in here. Print every other, and why don't we work with a different fruit? Banana. There we go. So here we would want to print capital B N N if I was printing every other thing out. Right now I'm just printing B-A-N-A-N-A. So how could I print out every other character? Right, by manipulating the for loop. So I want to start at 0, right? and I want to go up to but not include the length of the string. So I want to go up to but not include, let's see, this is 6 long, so I want to go up through 5, not include 6. So this would work. So this doesn't change it, but this gives me, you know, the same thing. But how do I make sure that I get every other one? Yes?
You could count by 2 here, so go to 6, and then like comma 6, comma 2.
Yeah, that's easier. B and N, right? So, right, the third thing is the step, which allows us to count up by doing other, allows us to count up every other one. All right. So let's go ahead and write something a bit more advanced, but here we don't have to worry about the indices for them. Or actually, yeah, we kind of do. Tell a lie. So here, I want to write something that looks like this. This is something I'd probably ask on an exam, so a bit advanced for today, but whatever. Let's suppose that I want to write something where if I'm past banana, I want to write something that looks like this. B, B-A, B-A-N, B-A-N-A, B-A-N-A-N, B-A-N-A-N-A. The issue with spelling banana is not starting spelling banana, it's stopping spelling banana, so right. But you get the idea here. We want to print it out like the first letter, then the first 2 letters, then the first 3 letters, then the first 4 letters, then 5 letters, and 6 letters. Let's just review, by the way. Like, so over in here, right? So first off, right, I can figure out how long banana is by typing banana into here, and it will tell me 6, right? I can also do slices of the banana, right? I can slice up this banana in very interesting ways. Like if I want to get the first 3 letters, I can go I can do banana 0 through 3. Everybody remember this from last Thursday? How do I know that it's the first 3? Because subtraction. I can do 3 minus 0. It's the first 3. Oh. Banana. So you can actually do this to a literal, which is pretty interesting in Python. There we go. And that will get us ban. I'll go ahead. I feel more comfortable not doing that, so I'm just going to store banana in Word. Word 03. Bam. Great. Okay. If I wanted to get the first 4 letters, I would do what? Yeah. 0 for 4. Banana. Or banana. All right. So that's fairly straightforward there. So that also brings to an interesting question. We know that we can get the very first character, the B, by going like this. Word. Any idea what this would do? I ask because I actually honestly have no idea. I haven't tried it in a while. But just give me that. Okay, it gives me nothing. Okay. B, A, and then word, right? Because it starts at 0, goes up to, but doesn't include 0, so it stops. That's why. So this one would be also the very first letter because it gets index 0, goes up to, but doesn't include index 1. It's 1 letter long. All right, so I think by using this, we can solve our problem, right? If we can do 0 through 1 for this line, 0 through 2 for this line, 0 for 3 this line, 4, and then 5, and then 6, then we should be able to be set, right? So I'm going to call this word pyramid. And I'm going to go ahead and make plenty of space for me to work on it. Def word pyramid. And again, we're not really returning here because we're just printing stuff out. We'll return to returning on Tuesday, but the reason I introduced it is because this len function returns the length of anything you pass into it. It returns how big it is. And it's very nice that Python has one function that does that, because in Java, for arrays, you have array dot length, no parentheses. For strings, you have string dot length with parentheses, and for everything else, you have dot size with parentheses. And that's slightly annoying. I suppose I don't know why my running opinion is that the reason is that it's to torture undergraduates, but I mean, they don't need to do it like that. Yes. That's our argument. It's going to be our passed-in parameter, right? So that's saying that word pyramid takes in a string. I suppose actually I'll go ahead and call it word because that's actually 4 letters as opposed to 6, right? You can call it whatever you want. I like to just give it a meaningful name, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at writing a for loop. So for x so let's go ahead and say for letter in word, right? We're just going back to the basics over here. We print out the letter, right? This will produce, and let's go ahead and comment this out over here and just do word pyramid, and then we won't return back to main for a while, so word pyramid, but this is just simply to get it to run. Oh, right, I have to pass in a word, so again, I'll pass in banana. This time I'll do it all lowercase because why not? Okay, and it printed out 1 letter at a time. So why don't we go ahead and print it out together, right? End is equal to boom. So I'm going to print out 1 letter at a time, and the reason I'm going to print it out 1 letter at a time rather than printing the entire word is because I want to get practice using nested loops. Right? That seems like a reasonable thing, especially since you guys are going to be working on nested loops a lot. So giving you some practice to do that seems like a reasonable idea, right? So really, though, I don't want to print every letter. I want to print 1 letter in the first, 2 letters in the second, 3 in the third, 4 in the fourth, then 5, then 6 letters, right? So, you know, let's see, if I go up to, like, if I ask what the length of the word is, it's going to be what? 6 in this case, right? 6 letters. So 6 letters, 6 lines. That makes sense. Okay, so for I in length of word, all right, and now I'll just indent this. For I in length of word, then for every letter in the word, I'm going to print it out. And once I printed out the entire word, I'm going to add a empty print line over here just so that I can get it to a new line. Oops. It says int is not iterable. I in, oops, it's range len word, right? Banana, 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 banana. May have been just an excuse so I could do that. So, right? So for I in range length of word, so this prints it out 6 times because there's 6 letters. If I passed in hello, it would print out hello 5 times. Right? Now what I want to do is I want to print out what? I want to print out 1 letter in the first one, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, and so on and so forth. Okay? So what instead of printing out the entire word, I print out just a slice of the word. So let's go ahead and create a slice of it. Oh, don't want to use that word. I'll call it part. Or, yeah, part of the word. It's equal to word, and let's say it's equal to word from 0 to I. And then we iterate over part instead, and let's see what happens. All right? Actually, let's predict what happens. So I is going to be 0 in the first case, right? So this will be word 0 to 0, which will be what? What's 0 to 0 again? It's nothing. It's empty. It's this thing, the empty string. So looks like a space, but it's lying. So this will give us empty string, so it won't print out anything. Then it'll print out a new line. So then I will be 1. So it'll print out, so 0 to 1 is what? B. So for every letter in B, we print out B, and then we're done. All right? I will be 2. What 0 to 2? B, A. So print out B, then it'll print out A, and then it'll print out a new line. And so on and so forth. So we've got 0. So we've got something that resembles it. This is actually pretty darn close, right? Once you get it into this, the kind of thing, you know you're very close, right? We've got nothing. We wanted 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. Instead, we got nothing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we're off by 1, which is a very common error that you make in computer science, off by 1. Where basically it's just shifted a bit to the left or to the right, or your answer is just off by 1. It's more common in computer science than in even math. So what can I do to fix this since I'm off by 1? Right? My issue was that my first one went from 0 to 0, then 0 to 1, then 0 to 2. Right? What I really would like is that it goes from 0 to 1, then 0 to 2, then 0 to 3. Right? So how can I fix that? Yes? I plus 1. There's plenty of ways to do it. I plus 1 is one way to do it. B, BA, BAN, BAN, right? All right. Another way to do it, if you were thinking of this is perfectly viable too, is that you could go 0. Sorry, you could do, well, I would like 1 in the first line, so we're going to start from 1, and then I'd like to go up to length plus 1. Right? And that would do that too, right? Where you just shift the indices, where you shift your range over 1. Instead of being from 0 inclusive to 6 exclusive, you push it to 1 inclusive to 7 exclusive, right? You just shift that entire range over by 1. There are many ways to skin a cat. I don't know why we use that as an expression. Sounds actually very terrible to do to a cat, but there you go. Whatever actually makes it work easiest in that case is better. Again, it's like a lot of things. It's like the whole do you do camel case versus do you use underscores? The key is that once you do one way, it's easier if you're consistent, because then you're going to have to be, oh, in this for loop, am I adjusting the I by 1, or am I adjusting the range by 1, right? So whatever you are doing, be consistent within the program, or at least the function you're working in. Preferably the entire program, but there's not really a preference. I happen to have the preference of this, the first solution, simply because it only is 2 characters. It's only 2 characters more than our wrong answer. It's less typing. Preference by laziness, I guess. All right. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at a kind of question I would ask you on maybe an exam or something like that, right? Especially on quizzes, right? Here's a kind of question I might ask you on a quiz. The kind of question, right? Suppose I wanted you to write a function that printed out the following. Not function, but write a loop that printed out the following. Just a loop. 1, 6, 16, 21, right? And then let's go ahead and add this, because otherwise it'll be like, otherwise there's going to be too many of the same number there. Okay. 1, 6, 11, 16, 21, 26. Suppose I just wanted you to write a loop that printed out that sequence, okay? How would you go about doing that? Well, the first thing, of course, is that you're a human, and if there's one thing that humans are good at, it's finding patterns. That's like, That's like most of what the entire job of our eyes is. It's just like looking at stuff and saying, hey, is that something that's going to eat my face? No, it's not. I'm safe, right? It's identifying patterns, right? You're good at identifying patterns. So what is the pattern that's over here that we see? Yes. Right, it's in increments of 5, right? Rather than incrementing by 1, I'm incrementing by 5. So that's that pattern, right? So there's 6 lines there, right? They're each incrementing by 5, and we're starting with 1. Okay, so let's see how many different ways we can solve this. And I'll go ahead and do this outside of I'll go ahead and actually do this inside of main because I should. All right, so let's go ahead. All right, so where are we going to start this loop at? 1, right? So for I in range, where does this loop, what number does this start at? 1. All right. What does it go up to? It goes up to 26, which means that, what do I want to put here? 27. All right. And what does it go up by? 5. Print I. This is actually way easier in this class than it is in Java. In Java, it's a bit trickier. You have to be a bit more, right, so printed it up at the top, right? 1, 6, 11, 16, 21, 26, right? If I wanted it, so that's pretty cool. There any other ways to do this? Yes?
You take the 5 out of the top, and then just under the print, put I plus 5.
I plus 5. Let's see what that does.
Not in the print, under the print.
Under the...
Yeah, like I equals I plus 5.
Ah! Excellent. Sorry for misinterpreting. I is equal to I plus 5. What did I do wrong there? Oh! So that would work in Java, I think, but basically here we're changing I and then we're updating I again every time we go around. So we changed I here and then we change. So you change I to 6, then you change it back to 2. Okay. All right. How could we solve this using an if statement? Any ideas? Is there any way we can use modulo here? Right? If we were doing stuff divisible by 5, that would be fairly easy. What would you do if it was divisible by 5, right? If we just wanted to print out numbers that were divisible by 5, what would we do with an if statement? By the way, the first solution that we came up with, that's perfectly sufficient for an answer on the exam. So, but I'm just going over different ways, trying to stretch your mind, so to speak. So if I is divisible by 5, that's how I do divisible by 5, right? It would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, right? But I don't want those. I want 1, 6, 11, 16, 21, and 26, right? So I suppose if I wanted to be really hacky, I suppose I could say I could add, since they're all multiples of 5 plus 1, I could do this, right? But that's not super intuitive. That's more of like, it feels more of a hack than anything, right? Yeah, I could overstep it, right? So instead, let's go ahead and just think. What do these all have in common when I mod them by 5? Yeah, there's one remainder. There's a remainder of 1. So if I change this, if I mod 5, if the remainder is 1, I get the correct answer. Lots of ways to do this problem. The easiest way, of course, was the first way. Questions so far? All right. So I'm going to pause this here, and I think it's time to take a short quiz. So let me go ahead and pause this here.